Welcome to today's edition of Pegasus Test. On today's edition, we're going to cover the pre- and post-combat inspection. Prior to stepping off on our FTX at the last one Shepherd in West Virginia, Brent Downing, who was my patrol leader, assigned me a gear list that he wanted us to have as one, a patrol, and two, our individual teams and individuals in the teams to have. What I've done here is I've laid out as close as possible to that list that he assigned so we can go over what was needed for the mission at hand. For in-depth coverage of what was going on the FTX, please look down in the description box below. Check out both mine and Brent 0331's video on the FTX that we did at One Shepherd. There we'll go over what we were to accomplish and also what we did. We had 3 levels to the inspection. There was the gear that you were carrying on your person at all times, either in your pockets or on your 782 gear. The second level was equipment that was carried in your pack, and that was stuff you need to sustain yourself while in the field. The third level was team level equipment. This was items that were assigned to your team and not the individual, and they were items like night vision, binoculars, communications equipment, TA1s, etc. The pre-combat inspection was conducted as such. The whole squad was required to lay out their gear on the ground in the order of organization of it. So it was patrol leader, APL, myself, then the first team, and then the second team. So everybody was laid out in their order, and then what happened is the individuals, once their gear was laid out, they were inspected by their team leaders. Once they were ready, I as APL inspected the team leaders, and then I double checked what they did. And as a final thing, Brent came in and looked over what we did after I gave him a report that we were ready to step off.
Hey, show me your fucking 3 pairs of socks that are going in your ruck. All right, 1, 2, 3. Show me your fleece and or jacket and watch cap. All right, here's my poncho liner, here's my field jacket liner, here's my beanie. All right, good to go. And say, are you fire team leader? Yes. Show me your binos for your fire team. All right, right here. All right, show me your bug juice for your fire team. Right here. All right, show me your 3 chows that are packed inside your main pack. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna say, where's your hygiene gear? So I want to see your hygiene gear. Remember, minimum was toothbrush, toothpaste, yeah, and foot powder. That was minimum. If you want to take extra shit, like I threw in some, some moleskin and some chapstick. I threw in that in addition. So if you want to throw in something additional, that's fine. You got to hump it. Just I want at least the minimum. All right. The bungee cords, I prefer that everybody has 2 bungee cords, because what I think is going to happen is it's going to rain. All right. And I'd like to, at least when we're in the defense, our fighting positions, we take our ponchos. We'll rig up. You can rig up your poncho as overhead cover. Make a lean-to on top of your fighting position. All right. It'll keep you out of the rain for the most part. And then sleeping system is laid out across the back, just like I have it and Les have it. I want to see what's going inside your bivy sack. So obviously whatever you're taking should be inside your bivy sack already. I want to see what's in there. So it's like you can see, I can see Les has a poncho liner. I've got a poncho liner. If you have the green patrol bag, that's fine. I just want to see it. Okay? So does anybody have any questions up to what I've covered thus far?
First thing, after your unit leader has passed down an equipment list, first thing most important to do is write it down as the APL. APL then goes out and distributes this information to the team leaders, who pass it down to the members of their teams. Always write this stuff down, because no matter how long your memory is, it's shorter than the short stubby pencil. The pre-combat inspection can be conducted at any designated point by the patrol leader or assistant patrol leader. When we did it out at One Shepherd, we picked off a secluded area near the fob to do it at. Here I'm doing it in the indoors so there can be clarity of sound, because there's a lot of construction activity out in my normal area for doing this stuff, and it doesn't make for good video. So the first thing we had that was super important was night vision. We knew during our mission we were doing lots of nighttime patrols. We only had 3 sets, so we distributed them 1 per team. The next item on the gear list was a VS17 panel. This was also something that we wanted 1 per team if possible. It turned out in our case it wasn't, as only Brent and I had them, but You know, we had them available to us if they're necessary. In my personal opinion, the VS17 is a completely underrated piece of gear. It's highly visible, good signaling equipment, especially when you need it for signaling aircraft. First thing we went over were items that you needed on your body. And of course, the first thing you need is ammunition. Our base load on this was 7 magazines, which you see right here before you at the bottom of the screen. Now, to be clear, so there's no doubt, One Shepherd issues their own magazines, and this is for a control measure to make sure that no live ammo can ever accidentally be introduced into the scenario. So I've only placed 7 of my magazines here as a representative. Next item on our gear list was water. We had to have 2 canteens or the equivalent. So right here on my 782 gear, I have 2 1-quart canteens. Also, over on my main pack, I kept a Hydrostorm that was enabled me to carry an additional 100 ounces of water with me. In addition to the 2 canteens that I kept with me on my 782 gear, in my pack I kept a Hydrostorm that had an extra 100 ounces of water. Water is very important. I'm one of those people that take more than I think I always need because 1, I end up almost always using that. 2, I don't tend to run out. 3, we had wells available to us out there in the operational area, and that was great. We knew we had wells, we knew we had good water sources going into it. Real life, you don't always know where your water source is, so always take a bit of extra water. Next item we wanted to have was a compass, and those were assigned to team leaders. Now, it lucked out that a lot of people in our squad had their own compasses, so we had an abundance of them, and that's a good thing. For example, this compass here, I've had a long time, 20 plus years, and it's a Tritium Compass. Well, do the math right there, right away, you figure out the Tritium's long since dead. So I had a compass that was not functional at night, but several people in our squad had them, so that turned out to not be a problem, other than the fact that I need to upgrade my compasses, and that's on my list of things to get done. Next item here on our gear list was for the team leaders to have enough camo face paint for their entire teams. Once again, everybody was super proactive on this, and most people had their own camo face paint, so we had more than enough of it. Can't be stressed enough that camo face paint is something that constantly has to be updated in the field. You sweat, inadvertently you're wiping your face, and after a day, your camo face paint is gone. So it's always a good habit that if you're taking a sills halt, a chow break, anything like that, check your face paint, touch it up as needed. Next thing on our packing list for everybody to have was their Gore-Tex. So us being Blue 4, we were in Woodland. That's my Woodland Gore-Tex, and it's a great piece of gear, works really good. I highly recommend everybody getting this, even just for your regular camping needs. This is good stuff. We were required to keep that in our butt pack, and the reason for that was our forecast was calling for storms. Pretty much the whole week we were there at One Shepherd, and we'd really lucked out, but the days of the FTX especially was calling for the heaviest rain. And definitely Friday night, early Saturday morning, they did not disappoint. The weather gods, I should say, did not disappoint. We required that to be kept in the butt pack. Another item that was required to be kept in the butt pack was a dry pair of socks, waterproofed. This cannot be stressed enough. Your feet can take you out of the fight faster than anything. And when you know you're going to be in a wet environment, changing out your socks is very, very important. Another item that was required and is not represented here was to keep one chow in your butt pack. Now, one of the things we did was we had MREs issued to us, and they were stripped down to just the necessities. I'm not breaking open my MRE supply to start breaking them down just for that just yet, so notionally be advised there was an MRE in this at the time. Next item to have, notepad and pens to go with it. This, I cannot stress enough, you need to have this. It's essential. Not saying that you have to use Right in the Rain brand, but they live up to the thing. My notepad, the one that's currently in my hand with everything written on it, got soaked, and I was still able to use it, and if it had been regular paper, it would have just turned into shreds and melted away. So, a notebook is essential gear. We were required to have 2 IR Chem Lights per person, that which they did. Right now those had to be turned back in, so this is represented by a regular Chem Light and the cover for it. Next item that we're required to have on your body was a sniper veil. I brought extra, which came in handy. A few people didn't have them, so we redistributed, and by the time we stepped off on the mission, everybody did in fact have a sniper veil. Okay, another item that we had to have per team was a camera of some type. We more than met this requirement. I had the camera that I'm using to film this video. I had my cell phone, as you see here. I had my GoPro. Brent had a lot of the same equivalents, and there was a very specific reason for this. Under the rules of engagement of the One Shepherd thing, when you quote-unquote kill somebody with miles, unlike in the real world where you can ransack through their pockets and packs and everything for actionable intelligence, you cannot do that at One Shepherd, and for good reason. The people are still alive. You don't want to harm somebody. You don't want to get into a tussle. So the rules are that you have to go up to that person that you've just killed and say, do you have any sensitive items? They are required to say yes or no. They have to tell the truth, and they hand it over to you. You have 1 minute to look at it, and then you have to give it back to them. So by a camera, within a time, we just could take a picture of it and then take a look at it later when we had time to analyze it. Now, in the actual operation, no opportunity came up to quote-unquote get sensitive material from the dead, but we were prepared to do it should we. Next item on the packing list that had to be on your body was your red lens flashlight. Now, I actually carried 2 flashlights because at One Shepherd I managed to destroy a lot of gear this time around, and 2 of the things I destroyed were both the flashlights I brought with me. So my white lens flashlight was rendered inoperable. Second of all, to have a red lens flashlight, I used my little proton map reading light right there. So this brings up the old adage, 1 is none and 2 is 1. Keep that in mind. Okay, as we move over to the pack and things we had to carry with us in the pack, first thing had to have was Gore-Tex Bottoms. Now here they're represented by some black Gore-Tex Bottoms, and I use these when I go on vacation overseas and stuff for rain gear. My Gore-Tex camouflage bottoms have long since been destroyed, and I figured I could get through this exercise without them, and I was dead wrong. So obviously in my next gear rotation I'll be getting Woodland and OD Gore-Tex bottoms to go with my Woodland and OD rain gear tops. Now we had to have 1 e-tool per team, and there's mine. The reason we had to have an e-tool per team is 1, you need it for field sanitation, the fact that you have to dig your cat holes to take care of business or talk to Congress. And the other thing you need it is for construction of your fighting positions when you're in your patrol bases. Another item that is not shown here was 1 machete per team. In my team, Brent had the machete, and we basically did have 1 per team. It's always been my thing in the past, I've never bothered to have a machete because someone always has had one in the past. However, going forward, I realize I'm going to correct that issue, deficiency in my gear, and I'm going to be acquiring 1. Laid across the back of the display here is my bivvy and my whoopee or poncho liner. Now, we knew from our weather conditions in late April going into early May in the West Virginia area, your temps at night, they're going to get a little cool, but not drastically so, and it's normally very temperate. So it was definitely felt that the bivvy, giving the water protection, and the whoopee for some warmth was going to be more than enough. And to be honest, out in the field, the few times I got to sleep, it did just fine. Next item that was required to be in the pack. Well, that was simple. 3 pairs of dry socks, waterproofed. There they are. You got to have them. You got to be rotating your socks as you go throughout the operation to keep your feet in the fight. I can't stress that enough. Also, not represented here in this layout, as mentioned earlier, we had 3 additional chows in addition to the one that was kept in our butt pack on us. Also, you're required to have a waterproof bag or a giant trash bag. I individually waterproof my items, and the pack I use, the Blackhawk Special Operations Ruck, is incredibly water resistant, so that's how I met the waterproof requirement. Another item to have 1 per team was bug juice. Luckily the bugs weren't really too bad this time out, I think because the weather was a little cooler than the seasonal norm. However, thank goodness the bugs weren't a problem, but we had the bug juice in case we needed it. Of course, another thing you always need in your pack is your hygiene gear. In addition to the roll of toilet paper, I had toothbrush, toothpaste, and some other minor hygiene items. Another thing you had to have in your pack was 1 roll of tape. This can never be stressed enough. You always need tape. You will always find a use for it. We also had another requirement to have 1 pair of binos per team. We weren't able to achieve that. We only had 2 sets to spread throughout the whole patrol, and one of them was my little small set that I somehow managed to craft the lens on, so only one of the sides is now functional. I have no freaking clue how I did that. But it goes with everything else that I was breaking on this mission. So, okay, another requirement for us to keep in the pack, warming layers. And in this case, I chose by a normal temperature at the late April, early May time frame. I was pretty thoroughly convinced that a field jacket liner would do the trick. And for me, it did later on in the exercise. I kept my field jacket liner in a plastic bag. So after the torrential rains that had me soaked to the bone and the pre-stages of hypothermia stepping in, yeah, the field jacket liner warmed me up, kept me going, and it was good stuff. Other people used different items, and the point was there wasn't a prescribed warming layer, it's just that you had to have one, and I always suggest that you do. Another warming layer item that you were supposed to have was a watch cap. Another piece of gear that somehow became adrift while I was out in the field, but I had it with me. I don't now. I need to replace that, which is a good thing to do anyways, because that piece of gear was pretty long in the tooth as it was. The next thing that everybody had to have was extra batteries for their nods and the radios. Right here I've simulated them with a pack of AA's and CR123s that I normally keep when I'm not doing One Shepherd, but there we had a nice case to keep all the batteries in, and that worked out really good. Another item that we had to have per team was a minimum of 50 feet of 550 cord. Right here I have that simulated using the tactical rope dispenser, a highly excellent piece of gear that I'll be doing a video on in the future, but that was essential. It kept the line from getting tangled, has a built-in cutter, and it even has a way to measure out what you're doing. 550 cord is always essential. You always end up using it. And for example, on this operation, I used 550 cord for hanging sniper veils to camouflage our position. I also used it to repair my 782 gear, which completely fell apart on me out there, and I'll go over that in another video too. Some other essential items that, not on the packing list, but we had to have, and right here represented by the DR8 reel and this field phone. Now on the One Shepherd operation, we had 2 DR8 reels and 4 TA1 phones. Now here I've got a DR8 with the hand reel attached to it. The ones we had at One Shepherd did not have the hand reels, unfortunately. But we brought 2 of those along so we could link the command post to the 2 positions in our defensive sector. And that was absolutely critical to what we did, because when we were in the defense, we could power down our radios, switch back to the phones, and saved battery life. Like, as far as I know, I think only one team had to change batteries. The rest of us were able to get through the whole op with batteries intact, no problem whatsoever. Also shown here is the field phone. Now this is a surplus West German battery-powered field phone. The ones we used were TA1 sound-powered field phones, an excellent and completely underrated piece of gear. It's also much more compact than this. The TA1 would actually fill a space about this big, so this is a bit better. I don't have a personal TA1, so I use this to fill in. The only bad things about using field phones is DR8s are heavy as hell. It's 20 plus pounds. And they don't ride really good in your pack. And when I went out, I had some pack troubles, and it caused the whole thing to just kick my ass and make the hump out to our patrol base miserable. But, you know, it's an essential piece of gear, and it was worth the pain that it induced. So there you have it. There's an overview of the gear we used on the FTX in the spring semester of One Shepherd in West Virginia. Now, you know, this is pretty minimalist. If you take a look at the video link below to Brent's video of what he was taking to One Shepherd. And normally I'd bring a lot more stuff too. Having never been to One Shepherd before, I followed their packing list pretty closely just to get the feel of the way things go. For the most part, that worked out pretty good for me. There's a few extra things I wish I'd have brought along. There's a few extra things I wish I'd brought more of. But hey, that's just lessons learned. Like I said, make sure you check out Brent's videos on what he took to each of the One Shepherd things and get a better idea of extra things that you can bring along that'll make your stay out in the field a whole lot easier. Moving on, the post-combat inspection. And that is just as important as the inspection to go before you go out. And in many ways, it's even more difficult because you're coming back, your gear has been used, it's wet probably, it's not in the same pristine condition you had it when you left. You've been possibly in some firefights, and everybody's worn out. Everybody's absolutely smoked. In our case, we were out well over 48 hours nearly, and minimal sleep. I know Brent, at best, that guy got 2 hours of sleep tops. I probably didn't get much more than that. Everybody else in the team got various amounts depending on the time of day and the things that we were trying to accomplish. So in that stuff, your brain is just not functioning as well as it was when you're well rested getting ready to step off on the mission. Not only that, people want to get cleaned up, people want to get some hot chow in them, and all these, there's a lot of powerful distractions and to go along with the tiredness that everybody's feeling. But the post-combat inspection is absolutely as equally important as the pre-combat inspection. And that's to make sure you got control of your sensitive items. Do you still have all your nods? Do you still have all your radios? Do you have all the components to those items? Do you still have your DRA? Did you lose your TAA-1? Do you have all your magazines that you left with? How much ammo do you have left? How much pyro has to be turned back in? Did you lose gear? For example, I mentioned earlier, my watch cap off into the wind. Don't know what happened to it. I know I had it when I stepped off. Don't know where it was when I came back. And those are things that happen. And why can that happen? Well, one of the things, you're using the gear pretty hard. Two, a lot of times when you're digging into your pack, you're doing it in the middle of the night and you cannot see squat. So you think you're pulling out your bivvy and your poncho, and yeah, out can come another piece of gear that you didn't catch and it fell out. Now, in the bright light of the morning, yeah, you probably see a piece of gear laying there going, ah, fuck, and then you pick it up and you put it back in your pack. But if you pull something out at 2300 and then you step off and leave that area at 0300, you're never there, you don't see daylight again and you've left a piece of gear behind. It just happens sometimes. But you have to find out where it is. If it's your personal gear, well, that's on you. However, if it's organizational equipment sensitive items, like, oh wow, you pulled something out and the NVGs fell out, the spare pair that you had, or the J-arm for it that you weren't using at that particular time, for example, you got to go back and find that. That's important stuff. Even if it's something innocuous as a map, you got to go back and find that because that is important. So the post-combat inspection is to figure out what you have, also to figure out what you've broken. Hey, you may have broken a radio antenna, and well, you got to go get a new antenna for when you go out on your next operation, so things are up. I'd like to thank you for tuning in to Pegasus Test. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and tune in for future videos about One Shepherd, and do your best to make it to the next semester.